Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Islam Study Circle. As per our format, we will be discussing some passages from the Quran and then from the Hadith, next from the Bible, and then we'll have a discussion on a relevant topic, and finally, the session will conclude with a Q&A segment. The Quranic verse that is going to be under discussion today, or group of verses, I would say, they are from 14 to 17. This is Surah number 87, Surah Ala. The words are قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. In the hereafter, successful shall be he who purified his soul and remembered his Lord's name, then prayed. No, in fact, you give preference to this worldly life, even though the life to come is better and more lasting. So, viewers, as you can clearly see that we have discussed this a number of times, that the basic objective of religion, and as such, all directives of Islam, is purification of the soul. The Quran and Islam wants us that we have a purified soul, we have a life that is based on purity, not only individually but also collectively. So every directive of religion that you can find and understand and derive from the Quran has this sole objective, that that directive is going to contribute in some way or the other to be a directive that makes you a purified individual, a purified soul. And that purity is something which is essential to enter paradise. And that is why we know that the Quran tells us that only purified souls who have cleansed themselves from all dirt and filth, will be recipients of paradise. And God wants us that we make ourselves entitled to paradise by being pure and absolutely clean individuals. Now, the thing which has been mentioned here is that in the hereafter, exactly the same objective is put forth, that kad aflaha man tazakka, that he who thinks that he is going to be successful on the day of judgment should know that for that it is essential that you purify yourself. That is the only way to paradise. So purity, individual and collective purity, inner and outer purity, is the key to paradise. And this key to paradise is something that has to be understood at all cost. And then it is actually said in the next part that what exactly is the way to this. I mean, for example, if we say that we have to make ourselves pure, then what exactly is the way to make ourselves pure? So one strategy is then mentioned in this surah. It's not that it's comprehensively said that, I mean, this is the only way to purify your soul. No, this is one of the major strategies which the Quran is presented, and that is وَذَكَرَ اسْمَ رَبِّهِ فَصَلَّى, that in order to purify your souls, you should remember God. And for this, a method of remembering God is to pray to Him, is to offer the prayer, the salah to Him. And remembering God obviously is something that should be spontaneous. It should not be a mechanical process, as has become the case generally these days, that people, they read on beads and rosaries and they think that they are chanting God's name, or maybe some phrases. That is not the point. The point is that remembrance of God should be a spontaneous thing, something that strikes you and then you say something in response. For example, when you see a beautiful scenery, when you see the mountains, when you see the sea, when you see the winds blowing across your cheeks in a soft way, in a very, very approvable way, what do you say? You say Subhanallah, because now you are glorifying God on what you are seeing. Similarly, when you receive some gift of God, or you find that you have been a recipient of some favor of God, spontaneously you say Alhamdulillah. Again, when you have to do something in future, you say Inshallah. And then, of course, when you see something which is again something that relates to someone's praise, you say MashaAllah. So all these are basically utterances that make us remember God. So this remembrance should not be mechanical, it should be spontaneous. And that spontaneity is invested to remembrance when we take it as a response to a certain stimulus which is outside of us. The du'as of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his supplications, we know that they are so, they're so impactful. So we have du'as for various routines before going to bed, just after getting up from sleep, before eating food, entering into the washroom. So all these have been punctuated with certain utterances, and these utterances again are a way to remember God. So remembering God, as I said, is something that should be informally done in a way that just strikes your heart in some way or the other. And one formal way of remembering God is mentioned in this verse, fasalla, that in order to remember God, you prayed to him, you 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 spontaneously, you fell down, you bowed before him, you placed the highest point of your body, which is your forehead, on the ground. You kneel before him, you knelt before such a before this deity whom we call God, and you acknowledge his greatness and express your gratitude. This again is something that makes you realize that God is great, he has been kind to me, I'm going to show my gratitude to him by bowing down to him, by prostrating before him, and by acknowledging his favors, and also ultimately including others in my favors. I'm going to share my favors, I'm going to share my gifts and whatever I have for the underprivileged, so that they can also enjoy what I have been blessed with. So, Zakaras Rabbihi Fasalla. And then what is said is, Bal tu'sirun al-hayat ad-dunya, that instead of occupying understanding that you should do this, because remember the addressees of this surah again are the Quraysh of, or the Bani Ismail, who were living in Mecca. This is a Meccan surah. So what is being told to them is that this was the right way. And by the way, the Quraysh, the clan of the Prophet, they prayed, they were very mindful of their prayers, although prayers had become distorted and a lot of the components of the prayer had been lost to posterity, but they still prayed. They knew what the prayer was. So prayer is not something that has begun with the Prophet. It was there ever since the time of Abraham. And remember, the Bani Ismail, they are Prophet Abraham's children. So they very well knew. So they are being told that if you have to really come up to the mark, then this is how you have to do it. But instead of doing this, what happens? بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا. In fact, you give preference to this worldly life, even though the life to come is better and more lasting. So without realizing that it is the prayer that is going to salvage you, it is the prayer that is going to purify you, what happens is that you give preference to this worldly life. And when you give preference to this worldly life, it means that whenever there is a clash between the requisites of this worldly life and the hereafter, whenever there is a clash, you actually succumb to the pleasures of this life and you sacrifice the requisites and the demands of the life hereafter. Whereas the life hereafter is the real thing for which you should go for, because it is more lasting. It says, khayrun wa abqa. It is better and more lasting. This world is fraught with so many shortcomings. It's a temporary world. It's full of, it's full of injustices. It is full of so many other things, which makes it an imperfect place to live in. And the real place to live, the real place to actually make a vouch for, to make a vow for, to go ahead, is the life hereafter. So we now come to the second segment, and this segment relates to uh, hadith that we will be studying. It is from the Al-Jami al-Sahih of Imam Muslim. I'm going to read its last translation. Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala anhu reported that God's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, many a person with disheveled hair and laden with dust, who are turned away from the doors, are such that if they swear by God, God will fulfill their oath. This is a very important advice, a very important teaching from Prophet Muhammad. And it tells us that how at times we give preference to appearance so much that we fail to realize the person who is inside. You might see a person with disheveled hair, unkempt clothes, unkempt hair, all sorts of untidiness. Maybe he's not very smartly dressed, and you feel that, well, such a person is good for nothing, and he's no good or she's no good. But the Almighty says you don't know what is inside that person's heart. He may be so close to God that God would not turn down what he has said. So, law aqsama ala Allahi la abarrahu, that if they swear by God, God will fulfill their oath. Of course, this is a manner of telling us that God is going to be very kind to such individuals, very compassionate. You might look at them as if they are they're not up to the mark in their appearance. Appearance does not. It's a very very flimsy and a very unreal standard to judge people. A person is what he is or what she is from inside. If a person is close to God from inside, if a person has compassion and kindness and selflessness, which of course manifests in various forms of a person's behavior and attitude, that is the person who is closest to God, not a person who, by his or her appearance, would look as if, he's good for nothing. So, the important teaching is that appearance can be misleading. Never form an opinion, never judge people by their appearance. You don't know if you have a person who is very well dressed, who looks very, very smart, but the situation of his or her heart is such that he or she is far away from God. And then, so what would you do? So, what you are doing is you are basing your judgment on what you see, and you don't realize what the person is from inside. So, in order to be careful, we have to judge a person when we have some dealing with that person. And we know that the Prophet Umar, that the Caliph Umar once said that if you have to know someone, then either you travel with that person or you have some business dealing with that person, because this is how you would be able to know he or she is from inside. Because when you travel, of course, in those days traveling was a matter of a couple of days, and you would be spending the day and the night and informally chatting with that person and getting to know that person, so that would reveal a lot who that person is. Similarly, if you have a business dealing with that person, this too will give you a fair idea of who that person is. It is then that you can maybe pass some judgment about, or at least make a rough idea that whether this person is someone who would you like to continue a friendship, or maybe consider for some other important task. But as I said, the important thing, a very important thing, is that today the standard of the world has totally tilted towards appearance. Appearance becomes everything. And this is, in particular, the reason because uh, of social media, show business, things which have glitz and glamour. Uh, all these things, they focus on one's appearance. They focus on the outside of a person, which might be very good, very pretty, very handsome, but we don't know that person from inside. So we have to be extremely careful. And as I said, vice versa, don't dismiss a person if you see that person in a different form that you would accept. If he or she is not dressed the way you would like a normal person to be dressed, that should not be a reason to pass a judgment or maybe turn down that person and maybe cut yourself off from that person. So, a very important advice. We now go on to the third segment, and this segment is it's actually two verses from the Bible. These verses have been taken from the book of Proverbs. This was a book that has been revealed to the Prophet Solomon, who was the son of David, peace be upon them. So the words are, "My son, give ear to the training of your father, and do not give up the teaching of your mother. For they shall be a crown of grace for your head, and chain ornaments about your neck." Again, something said with the depth of one's heart, and a lot of experience is reflecting that as when you are doing something, remember it is of foremost importance to rely on the wisdom of other people, and don't we should not invent the wheel ab initio. Things that have already been experienced are the ones that we should benefit from without actually going into that experience, because other people have experienced them, and there's no better a well-wisher who has full experience of things than our own parents. So that is why it is said, give ear to the training of your father, and do not give up the teaching of your mother. So it does not mean that you cannot differ with your parents. It does not mean that you can have your own opinion. Of course, you can differ with your parents in a polite way. Of course, you can have your own opinion. But the thing is that you must pay heed to what they say. Yeah, a lot of things that they would say are for your own benefit, and you would learn from them. Yes, there would be things in which they express their opinion, and you might not agree with them, and that is absolutely fine. But the experience that they can give you is unmatched. It is unparalleled. So you should gain from that experience, try to enhance your own experience, enrich that experience through the experience of your parents, and then you will realize that you are a better person. Critically evaluate the advice that they give you, critically evaluate whatever suggestion that they give you, but it is criminal to not even consider what they say. So you can dismiss what they say as an advice or as a suggestion to your life after evaluating it. But turning a deaf ear to it, not even listening to them, this is disrespectful. So respectful behavior entails that you listen to them, learn from their experience, and wherever you feel a difference of opinion, you have the right to politely differ and find your own way. So the beautiful thing about this passage is that it says near the end, for there will be a crown of grace for your head and chain ornaments about your neck. So this is the way of Prophet Solomon telling us that if you are able to benefit from the experience of your parents, if you are able to gain from them, then it is you who is the ultimate beneficiary. So there will be a crown of grace for your head and chain ornaments for your neck, as the verses say, that you will be embellishing your own self, you will be strengthening your own self, you will be reinforcing your own experience, and this is something that will show later in life. Initially, of course, all these things, you are exposed to these things, they become part of your life, but at times we are not able to understand them. So it is perfectly okay if we don't understand certain pieces of advice. We should still keep them in our mind, continue to reevaluate them and evaluate them, do what we think is best. But even if we have to differ with our parents, which is of course something which is very, absolutely lawful and allowable, then that difference of opinion should be very, very polite, very respectful, and in a way that you don't use harsh words, in a way that you're not rude to them. It should be very congenial. It should be in a very humble way. And this humility is going to affect the parents as well. And they will realize that at least our child, our grown up child, he or she gave an ear to our advice and maybe later on did not accept it. But they will not have this complaint that their advice was left or it went unheard. So it should not go unheard in any way. We now come to the fourth segment, which is primarily a discussion, moderated discussion. And the topic that we have today is the importance of hobbies in life. As we all know, every one of us, we have hobbies, and their importance, of course, is something that we will now be discussing. It is over to you, Mariam.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saleem. I will be hosting today,
Okay.
co-hosting with you today,
Okay.
Ms.
Mhm.
Bisma. The importance of habits. Well, if you want me to begin, I can tell you that I think habits are the most crucial.
Hobbies. It's hobbies, actually.
Yes, hobbies in life. Um, so I think hobbies are extremely important in life because I think they kind of ground you into becoming a person that you are. They keep you disciplined. They give you, something to uh, do which is constructive. It keeps you away from
Mm-hmm.
idleness. It
Mm-hmm.
keeps you away from gossip. I think also
Mm-hmm.
a very intrinsic part of it also brings you, I think, closer to religion, because I think once we discipline ourselves and once we find a way to amuse ourselves and keep ourselves gainfully occupied, I think we also stay away from the idleness of life, gossiping with people, indulging in wasting time.
Correct.
Um, so I think that is very important personally. Plus, I think it's very important because it makes you a person who's not constantly dependent on people. If you don't have habits, then you're always seeking to reach out to people and ideally spend time with them. You indulge in just wasting time. So I think you know, I think it makes you feel good about yourself. It gives you positive, feelings about yourself. Obviously,
Mhm.
because when you have hobbies, you also um, do things which are, uh, you know, which make you feel like you've achieved something. If you've read a book, you set a goal to, if you like playing
Mm-hmm.
sports, then it makes you healthy. If you like, any kind of a work that you do with your hands, like, knitting or
Hmm.
embroidery, it gives you a sense of accomplishment. So I feel it's very important, and I think it's very important also because it helps me spend time with myself, away from indulging in what I should not be doing. And plus, I also feel, in today's world where hobbies are suddenly becoming obsolete because of phones and because of
Hmm.
people don't feel that they feel they're just occupied by looking at their screen.
Hmm.
I feel it's a greater sense of accomplishment, especially for me. So that's how
Hmm.
I feel. If
Thank you,
anybody
Bisma.
else,
Yeah.
absolutely. Siddiqa, I see that your hand is raised. If you want to,
Yes.
answer, join the.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
So I have a couple, maybe more than a couple points. I feel that engaging in hobbies, it relieves stress and it hopefully brings peace to the heart. So when you do something that you love and you
Hmm.
enjoy, then you can actually create a moment of gratitude and reflection and give you sort of a purpose as well. Um, Also, like when we do a hobby, sometimes we kind of pursue our talent or passion, and it could be like writing, cooking, etc. And these are actually talents given by the Almighty.
Hmm.
If you're playing a sport or cooking really well, so this kind of gives us a chance to honor the trust that Allah placed in us when He gave us
Hmm.
those abilities. It also helps us grow, right? So because if we don't have a hobby, then we're sort of just on a one track. Maybe we're running a house or maybe we're working, but then it kind of gives us more of a personal growth in other directions as well. And the other thing, the last thing, it also, we get to involve other people sometimes
Hmm.
when because
Correct.
you can spread the joy and you can make more connections, and then hopefully foster a community of kindness and share joy and etc.
Hmm.
And one
So
more
if
thing,
I ask
sorry.
you, Siddiqa, okay, what are your own hobbies? How would you enlist your own hobbies?
So I really love this is a funny thing to say, but I'm a teacher, right? And I love doing pro bono classes. I feel like it's such a passion for me. Teaching was always a passion
Hmm.
for me growing up, and when I do that, I actually feel that I become a better teacher in my actual job as well.
Hmm.
Um,
Correct.
Non-professionally speaking, I love going for walks. I think I can never have a long enough walk. I love exploring. I live in a beautiful country, subhanallah. Canada is it's so beautiful and it has such a variety of landscapes that
Hmm.
I love exploring by walking. But I
Thank
wanted to
you.
say one more thing, Pai. One more thing
Please.
was
Yes. Yes.
living in a country where we're surrounded by so many other faiths, then when we do a hobby and we spread our talent or passion, then we're kind of also being present as a representative of our deen as well, and showing
Hmm.
them that this is
Hmm.
also what we do, because we have this stereotype that we don't do much other than
Hmm.
just deen stuff. So it kind of lets us
Hmm.
be present, representing ourselves as a Muslim as well.
Correct. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, Dr. Saleem. Thank you, Siddiqa. I don't see any raised hands right now, Dr. Saleem. So I also, Omar, I see that you don't have your hand raised, but I do see that you're a part of our discussion, group today. Would you like to share, Omar or Naushad Saab, Naushaba, Akram Bhatti Saab, Nadia, anybody who's wanting to share something about hobbies, since we are discussing that? If not, then Dr. Saleem, what do you have to say about hobbies?
Well, I think they are they express your personality the way it should be expressed. These hobbies, they are a reflection of your inner self, and you see, the only thing is that at times these hobbies, they have a very potent, I would say, potential, and that automatically manifests itself outside of you. And at times you repress it if you don't have time for these things. But I think that hobbies have a very important role to play. And first of all, they express your personality. They give you an idea of the talents that you have. And I think that the biggest service that you can do to yourself is that you try to make your passion your profession. So if your passion is something which of course manifests itself in hobbies, it becomes your profession, then it's like, as the Quran says, Nurun ala nur, it's light upon light. It becomes radiant because now you're pursuing a profession which generally spans 6 to 7 hours a day of something that you enjoy the most. And people who are lucky enough to have their passion as their profession, they outshine normally, they produce significant results, and they even revolutionize certain areas in which they are working. So the important thing is that the first priority should be that we discover this passion. The second, if somehow that passion can become a profession, and if it cannot, then obviously it should still continue, because as you have said, it is an antidote to depression, it is an antidote to any wrongdoing that we might fall into, we might succumb to with so many lures today. Our hobbies, they also protect us, they help us communicate to other people, they help us in also expanding the horizons of our own understanding of a lot of things. And if you are able to somehow connect with other people who have the same hobbies, so you can, I mean, of course, it could become a connecting network as well. So, I mean, these are things that all of us have experienced. So, discovering yourself, knowing who you are, and the very famous adage on by Socrates that know thyself is particularly directed at this, that you discover yourself, spend time with your own self, and find out who you are. And then, once you are able to know your strong points, your potentials, then I always find Einstein's very famous quote to be of immense importance to our younger generation, when he is reported to have said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So you work hard, your hobbies, they make you work hard. Your talent, it expresses yourself. So what Einstein was perhaps implying was that you don't have to be supremely talented if you are a hardworking person. Even 1% inspiration is enough, because the rest is 99% of perspiration. That 1% is like a seed. A seed is a tiny bit of a thing. And if it is nurtured properly, you see that small seed, which is hardly visible at times, it becomes a huge, expansive tree. I mean, the potential which a seed has is that of a tree. So the talent which all of us have, the hobbies that we have, they might be in their seed form, but that seed can really become tremendous. And if you look at people who are extraordinary, the people who are, I mean, who have exceptional qualities, are the ones who work hard on their abilities, who know that this is something that they have as a raw talent, and that talent needs to be polished. I have seen in my life so many talented individuals, so many, but because they lack that application, hard work, or skill to focus, they all their talent, it comes to nothing. It's like a charismatic thing. You might feel enamored when you talk to them, but I mean, they are not able to produce the results they can if they apply themselves. Which, as I just quote Einstein and said that he said that it's 99% of your own effort. So that effort has to be always there, and I think this is one of the greatest services that we can do to our younger generation, our children, if to our students, to our nephews and nieces, to people who are around us, that we are able to make them discover their inner personality. I mean, as I said, in some people it's very pronounced. You don't need to have it discovered because it comes out automatically. It's so impactful. But in other cases, you have to help them, and if you help them, make them realize that everyone has at least one talent, at least one thing in his or her personality that can distinguish that person, and it can create a lot of I would say outstanding work for the people around them. So that small seed has to be discovered, and that is where our educational system, our parenting comes in. And I do feel that around the world there is still a lot to be done in terms of parenting, in terms of our educational system, in which this seed of talent in every single individual should be discovered and put to use. And precisely for this reason, we can see that a lot of our schools and our universities and colleges, they have these co-curricular and extracurricular activities. So these basically are meant to stimulate the talent people have, and then of course pick and choose. so that they are able to not only enjoy life but also contribute to their own lot?
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. That was so wise. I also feel that, just that I think discipline also is a very, very, as you said, it's 99% perspiration. So that also actually tells you that being disciplined about something, even if you're not being able to master it, and even if you just average at it, you will certainly improve if you stick to discipline. I think discipline also actually at the end of the day becomes a hobby, because you know as Siddiqa also said that I think hobbies also reduce stress. I think, and discipline also reduces stress. So I sometimes feel that
Yes.
we just don't take the time anymore to focus on things because our focus has become so small. That's why I feel that lacking of this particular aspect of our personality is what's adding to the stress. I think, especially in the Western world now. I think it's also moving to the Eastern societies now. Yes, absolutely. Noshad Shavkat Saab, please, I see that your hand is raised if you want to say something.
Yes, Dr. Thank you, Bisma, and thank you, Siddiqa, for pointing out such lovely things. I would just like to go a little back in time when we had hobbies like collecting stamps, collecting flags, also people collecting matches from different countries, and having pen pals, writing to people from different countries without knowing them, getting their address or something. Those things have now almost disappeared. But I feel that hobbies are such an important part of your life that they, as was said previously by the two ladies, that it gives you a grounding, it gives you a mooring to your boat, because you get to know your horizons widen. You get to know about other people if you are following certain hobbies. Also, reading is an excellent hobby, which I think, unfortunately, because of the small screens that we have now, has almost disappeared. But even the present day internet, I think, is carries with it an opportunity to pursue habits like geography, for example, looking at maps of different countries, trying to find out where which city is, which is north, which is south, which is. If we inculcate these things in our kids of today, I think it will not only give them focus, but also enhance their understanding of our surroundings, which I think is an important part of hobbies. Because hobbies, gardening, there are many people who have gardens, they indulge in gardening, is an excellent hobby. Release stress, brings you inner peace, and as Siddhika said, brings you close to religion also. I think that we must, at the present moment, inculcate habits that are you can't do away with the internet now. You can't ask a child not to use the internet. He is ultimately going to use it anyhow. He'll need it for school, he'll need it for his education or whatever. But within the internet, I keep telling my children that if I had the facilities that they are having about gaining knowledge through the internet, I would have done at least 5 PhDs in my life. But then we need to tell our younger kids that there are better things to do than just to go on Facebook or watch TikTok or tweet on Twitter. So my feeling is that hobbies are essential. They keep us human. And quotation that you gave of Einstein, it's been put another way also, that big shots are those small shots who keep firing incessantly. If they keep firing incessantly, they'll become big shots.
Big
So that
shots.
is my view, Dr. Saab. Thank you very
Yes, thank
much.
you. Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for sharing these beautiful words.
Thank you so much, Noshad Saab. Akram Bhatti Saab, please speak your mind.
Assalamu alaikum.
Well,
But when I was young, I used to collect stamps, but then I gave up after
Mm-hmm.
that, and now my idle time I spent reading books, and I like politics. I like history and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So I love different cultures. So I read about cultures, I read
Right.
about history, and I learn a lot from history. And
Mm-hmm.
lately, for last 15, 20 years, I've included my religious books with it. Then also, I do not, I like read comparative study. Like I read Bible, I have three different type of Bibles, and
Mm-hmm.
then two, three books of good books of Sirah and Quran.
Mm-hmm.
I spend my time when I have some time studying and I like to read books holding in my hand, not internet. But lately, because of maybe eyesight, or I
Mm-hmm.
have started using the internet because some books are have very small fonts, so it's hard to read. So, but I still love to read book by. I have so many
Mm-hmm.
books that I have not even
Mm-hmm.
gotten to it. So that's my hobby. That when I, not much. So I read
Right.
different books,
Mm-hmm.
especially
Mm-hmm.
culture and history and
Right.
like that.
That, that's very well taken. Thank you. One thing that I'd like to comment on, as Nashad Saab has also pointed this out, you see, at times the hobbies that our children have, they are more of addictions, and they become addictions. I mean, sport becomes an addiction. So many other things when you go. I mean, you leave everything aside and you go into something so that you have no other obligation in your mind. Then you become an addict, and there are so many things that can make you an addict. I think one of the important things that we have to realize that today's children, as was just pointed out, they you just cannot snatch away their cell phones or their gadgets, or create barriers for their activity. I think the right way, if you have to mold a child or even an adult, if you think that the hobbies that he or she is undertaking, they are not healthy, then you see you need to create a parallel a stronger hobby, like to divert the attention. So instead of stopping, it's better to divert. When you start to impose restrictions on today's children, which I see so many young parents doing, because they just don't have any other alternative, because they're so busy themselves that they are over strict. So I think it is here that parenting also comes into play. It should come into play, and you have to realize that if you have given birth to children, then it is your responsibility also to take care of their grooming as well and mentoring them. So grooming and mentoring children actually involves the fact that you give time to them, and when you see that they are falling into wrong habits, remember, so these are things that every child, as he or she grows up, will experience in life. It is like all of us did. And then slowly, as we realize certain things that were not right, with time, we gain this experience. So, as parents, we have to realize that these healthy habits, these healthy hobbies are something that you can really help your child by diverting the attention, by creating other things, constructive things. I think I have pointed this out a number of times that artwork and gadgets, especially if you look at the Japanese, the way they groom their children, they seldom have time for so many other things, because the projects that they do, they make from their hand, they create from their hands, are so many. And you see, when you create something, creativity is it's a big addiction itself. So when you start creating something, that is like diverting your attention to a more constructive hobby. So I think that is also a part of our discussion, that as parents we must realize that totally imposing an embargo. I've seen mothers snatch away the phones. I've seen fathers asking for the passwords of their phones or their laptops, etc. That's not the right way to go about grooming young adults. It makes them lose their confidence, and at the same time, whatever you do, that's not going to stop them, because the availability of these things is so, it's so large scale, it's abundantly available, that what you're trying to achieve is going to be counterproductive. In fact, it might even backfire. So parenting here has the the challenge before parenting is that you create these alternatives, and also don't be ambitious that you would like to correct your children immediately. That's not going to happen. Children, they are going to make mistakes. In fact, this is how they would learn. So let them learn, and as we say, learn to let go of them. They will come back to you, don't worry. But if you, so to speak, don't let them do things, don't let them experiment, it's going to repress their personalities, or it's going to make them rebellious. So this was a word of caution I wanted to sound, that hobbies are important, and if you find your child is doing some hobby that you are averse to, then there is a method to groom that child, and that is something that as parents and as grandparents we must learn.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. So I have a chat question. Can I try to answer it, Dr. Saleem? You have
If
a
this is
chat question?
related to our discussion, otherwise we can
Yes,
go to
yes.
our.
How to discover hobbies? That's an interesting question. I thought that,
I think
you know.
that's hobbies are not, they don't need to be discovered. I mean, they are a very natural expression of a person's personality. I mean, when a girl starts painting or drawing, or she's fond of cooking, or when a boy goes and plays soccer, or he creates music. I mean, this is a natural expression of yourself. This is as an instinct. In fact, you don't have to teach your children how to eat or how to drink water. So hobbies, they are like your instincts as well. They are instinctively there. Yes, what happens is that at times these hobbies, I mean, a child becomes confused because of the environment that he or she might be living in, some of the personal preferences of the parents, which might, I mean, sort of create a confusion. Otherwise, they are such a natural expression of a person that any school going person, about that person and the way he or she spends the time that you are, I mean, free to your own selves there, is the time that you'll be able to see what those hobbies are. And yes, in some personalities which are strong personalities, the hobbies are, I mean, absolutely, I mean, they are blatant. You cannot miss them. And in others, the expression is a little weak. It is here that your parenting can make it strong by helping them out with that discovery, by helping them out with a lot of things that they might be doing, and by pushing them, by giving them small targets. So again, this is a question of good parenting.
Also, Dr. Saleem, I was thinking to answer this question that maybe for some people, if they don't know how to figure out how they want to have a hobby, maybe they can start reflecting, how they spend their time. Sometimes, exploring new activities, sometimes, seeking inspiration from others. If you go somewhere and you feel that somebody plays an instrument very well and you really enjoy listening to someone, maybe, join a club where,
Hmm.
you feel that people are, getting joy
I mean,
out of you.
you can't miss you see, a hobby is something that is a part of your person. You just can't miss it. The only thing is that
Absolutely.
at times parents, they get apprehensive, so you just cannot miss it. You cannot. You can see your child likes a pet. You can see that your child likes some sport. You can see that he is into AI or maybe IT or maybe some gadgets. So you see, I mean, this is just a question of observing your child and guiding your child, that how best you can uh, avail this opportunity.
Sometimes, Dr. Seema, I also feel that, especially as parents, you know, if we're not focusing on our kids and if we talk about ourselves and discovering hobbies, sometimes when I look at, people in their middle ages, I've seen so many people who have tried to now occupy themselves by, like finding out what they would be interested in. So if we remove children from the picture and just talk about ourselves, when kids go off to college and, suddenly people become empty nesters and then they want to find new things. So I've seen people picking up instruments to play. I've seen people who start singing, who join book clubs, who start playing a sport. And I think, like as somebody just asked, how do you kind of discover a hobby? And it seemed like they almost want to know how to kind of, so I think it's also reflection sometimes. And as I think the best thing that Siddika said, I felt that it reduces a lot of stress. I think there's so much stress around us now that if we do something productive.
Hmm. Correct.
So I feel that sometimes, so, that's what I think one person had asked, that how do you discover a hobby? So I think basically it's just reflection. You see where it's taking you, how your mind is,
Mm.
taking you towards something. So as you said, it's so instinctive that it'll naturally, your mind will veer towards something that you may want to do. Now, Shad Sahab, you wanted to add something to it? Please go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Sab, entirely agree with you. Uh, Getting married and having children, I think, is the easier part, and parenting and grooming is where
Mm.
the battle actually lies. And
Mm.
as I said earlier too, that with these modern developments, we can still mold a child to adopt hobbies that are ultimately going to benefit him. I'll give a personal example. I have a 3-year-old grandson, and I have diverted his attention from these cartoons and all to listening to birds which mimic different sounds, make different sounds,
Mm.
or act in
Mm.
certain different ways, different colors. Now, whenever
Mm.
he needs to do something, he comes to me and asks me, "Daddy, Dada, I want to listen to that bird. Want to listen
Mhm.
to that bird." So that's how it happens. If we increase
Mm.
knowledge, we
Mm.
divert, as you said. If you
Correct.
don't
Mm.
stop but just divert, and divert them to gaining knowledge
Mm.
about anything. I tell people, I say, if you are interested in comics, read comics and become such an expert in comics that nobody can discuss comics without asking your opinion.
Mm.
Discuss anything or read anything you are interested in reading about
Mm.
films. Read about films. I'm not asking you to follow
Mm.
me and read history or study religion or do this and do that.
Mm.
That will be your own inclination. But I would like to end, because ultimately I would like to end by a quotation which is from famous historian Will Durant. After
Mm.
having written his 11 volume story of civilization, he wrote
Mm.
a small book called The Lessons of History. And
Lessons of
in that
history.
he
Yeah.
talks about man having developed, so many things and gained so much knowledge and made the world such a beautiful place. But then he ultimately also reminds man that he is just a speck in this entire cosmos. And if
Mm.
one planet just strayed a few meters off its course, it could come crashing down on the earth and destroy that what man has built through the
Mm.
millennium. And then
Correct.
he quotes Pascal, a French philosopher, and this is a beautiful quote which I personally like immensely. He says, even if ultimately the universe succeeds in destroying man, man will still be greater than the universe because he knows that he is going to be destroyed, while of its victory, the universe will know nothing. Thank you.
Ah, nice. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
Wonderful.
Dr. So,
Mm.
Dr. Saleem, I have another observation. So, I noticed recently that there was a group of kids sitting, uh, 8, 10 of them, and there was some kind of conversational bullying going on between them. And there was this one child who I felt was the kindest of them all. He was just laughing, not really indulging in, being a bully at that time. And then when I was talking to my own um, child later, who was, a part of that conversation also. So, he asked, I pointed it out to him that, did you see that this kid was not being a bully? And then my son asked me, why? Why do you think that was? I said, I think because that is the only kid who has a lot of hobbies. I
Mm.
also feel that when people are engaged in other activities which are greater than themselves, I think it also gives them a kind of kindness and a softness and
Mm.
a calmness to the personality. Uh, you know, that is very, very endearing, and it's very, very obvious when you're sitting in a social setting. So I think
Mhm.
that, and it gave my son so much pause, Dr. Salim. When I
Mhm.
said, have you noticed that this kid is always, because he has so many hobbies, he's always
Mm.
doing something, and that, and to me also, we suddenly notice that, this kid is somehow standing out. He has hobbies. So
Mm.
I'm not saying that this is how it is, but sometimes people, you know, um, when they're satisfied in themselves, they don't need to prove it in a public setting that they can put people down. So this was such a interesting thing that I came across recently, and it really made
Yes.
my son take notice also, Dr. Saleem, and
Okay.
something interesting. So yeah, I don't see any
Thank
other
you.
raised hands right now.
Yes. So if you can, if there is any, there's any chance that people have any general questions, that we still have about 7, 8 minutes.
Anybody has any general questions, please, this is the time to ask right now if you want to raise your hands. Naushad Saab, go ahead.
Not related to any today's discussion, but
Mm-hmm.
the Farai school probably believes that the sajdas in the Quran
Mm-hmm.
are those places which the Prophet read and spontaneously fell into prostration. They are not something which is enjoined by the Quran or by
Mm-hmm.
Hadith that you prostrate here at this place yourself. But while reading Maududi Saab's commentary on Surah Najm, he states that certain Sahabi said that when the Prophet recited the surah to the Meccan hypocrites there, uh, and at the end it says this is probably the first sajda according to
Mm-hmm.
the traditional scholars in Surah Najm at the end, when he said that when the surah says that fall in prostration before your
Mm-hmm.
Lord, so as the glories and victory.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm.
So therefore, I wanted to know your views on this. I agree with the Farai view that it should be spontaneous, not something that
Mm.
14 places where we do the sajda and not the
Right.
others.
So actually, it relates to what we have studied earlier on when we said that you have to remember God. So we one of the ways to remember God, of course, is that you respond to external stimulus. So one of that external stimuli is the Quran, and that is what the Prophet did when he would read the Quran. It's not just the case with sajda. He would say other things as well. For example, when he would read verses that relate to hell or relate to punishment, he would seek God's mercy. When he would look at other verses that speak of bearing witness, he would say, I bear witness. So he would spontaneously respond to what the Quran would say. So he had a very living and a vibrant relationship with the Quran. And part of that was, of course, the sajda that you just described. That whenever he would see that there is a verse which tells us that, well, the sun and the moon, they prostrate before the Almighty, and everyone should also do that. So it was like a impulsive reaction from him that he would do so. And by not realizing that it was how the Prophet actually responded to the Quran, not through just not by prostration, but by through many other utterances, people started to actually formulate or evaluate his action as if it was something that relates to be done or not to be done. So it was more of a juristic approach towards religion that led to this understanding that, well, there are 14 prostrations, and about them there are 12. Certain people say that some of them are absolutely wajib and they have to be done, and there are a couple others about which they are not sure, so that if you don't do it, it will be fine as well. So it's not the case at all. I mean, this is how the Sahaba witnessed the Prophet prostrating, and they would just note it down that this was the verse that he would prostrate. And it's not, as I just said, if you look at our Hadith literature, you'll find many other utterances that he were, for example, in Surah Teen, it says, "Alaysallahu biyahkamil hakimin," and I mean, is not God the best of judges? And to this, the Prophet would respond and say, "Bala ana zalika min shahidin." Why not? And I am a witness to it. So similarly, the verse "Sabbih isma rabbikal a'la," that you glorify your exalted Lord. This is like a command, and in reply, he would say "Subhana rabbiyal a'la" or something like that. So you see, this is a response that he would give to the whole Quran, and it is an object lesson for all us readers of the Quran as well, that our relationship with the Quran should be this living relationship in which it's like a external stimulant that is causing something in your heart, and then you responding to it.
But sir, these 14 sajdas that we have, was it because the Prophet always prostrated at these 14 places, or
I mean,
putting an
this is how we get to know that at least these were the places where he did so. Whether he did all the time or not, we have no knowledge of that, and we cannot have any knowledge of that. All that we know is that people have reported that they saw the Prophet prostrating on these occasions.
right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. I do not see any raised hands right now, Dr. Saleem. So I have a question, which is not really related to um, today's lecture. So tell me, Dr. Saleem, sometimes arrogance is so nuanced, and arrogance in religion and all religions, not just Islam,
Hmm.
is really, I think, hated by God. That's one thing that we've understood.
Hmm.
How does one recognize nuanced arrogance, and how is one supposed to respond? If in a social setting, or
Hmm.
what is one supposed to do? How would you?
I mean, self-criticism. It's being always critical of yourself, always not giving allowance to your own self, always realizing that maybe I'm doing something from false modesty. So see, false modesty is the most subtle form of arrogance, that you put up a show of modesty, which you would know that, I mean, you're not doing it from your heart. So we have to be very careful about false modesty. We have to be very careful when people start praising us. We feel that joy, and I mean, it's perfectly okay to feel that joy that when someone praises you. But the thing is that feeling of joy should not make you become condescending towards others or make yourselves feel superior to others. So it's a strict regimen, I would say. Every time that something happens, you should review it. And as I have discussed, we've discussed this a number of times, that before going to bed every day, analyze the day that you have spent and see how. At instances, you might not have spoken the truth. You might have, I mean, distorted certain things, and that includes that you might have said something, for example, a very blatant diversion on a very blatant manifestation of this nuanced arrogance is our these jokes that we crack, or the fun that we make, and we mock at people without at times realizing. So we are doing it in good faith, but it crosses the limits, especially when the people in front of you are the ones who cannot joke back. I mean, when a boss is joking at his employees, what will they do? They just listen to him. They just cannot say the same words to him in the same vein. So you see, these are the things that you have to understand, that there are very subtle ways in which you are expressing yourself, criticizing other people without giving them allowance. I mean, all of us are individuals who make mistakes, and I see people, they get out of their minds when they start scolding even their children or their employees, that why was this mistake made, and they don't realize that it was a human error. I mean, anyone could have made them. So it's like a strict self appraisal before going to bed every day, that where did I fall short? What was the thing that I need to do? And this is a routine that has to go all along our lives. It should not, I mean, it's not like a couple of days sort of a thing, because of the fact that we keep on, I mean, we are human beings. Every single day something happens, right or wrong. So this is a regimen that we have to follow every day, that we must analyze our day before going to bed.
But Dr. Salim, there are times you see people who seem extremely entitled, and it's you know sometimes very arrogant. It can be very nuanced. So I'm not talking about, like, not self, but say if it's outside, or when you deal with people who are like that, what is the best way to congenially combat that? Like, but sometimes
Um,
you
I mean,
are may want to
hmm.
point it out to them also, but what's a subtle way of doing it? How would
I mean, I
one
think
do
there
it?
is no rule of thumb. It all depends on the personality type that you're facing. You see, this is not I cannot give you a generic answer, because you see, there are so many types of people that you face. There are people with whom you might freely express a certain idea. There are people who would get emotional. There are people who are coming from a certain background. There's so many variables. The only thing that you need to do is understand is that, I mean, choose your time, choose the words, choose the opportune moment. And at times, in spite of all that, you still can choose not to say anything. I mean, to not to say anything also requires wisdom. So you pick
Right.
and choose whether a person should be communicated or not, and you perceive how he or she would react if I convey certain things. And of course, then there are other things that you can do indirectly, without
Right.
saying, without, I mean, uttering words. There are things that you can say to other people in front of that person, or maybe do something which makes that person realize, so that it does not hurt that person's ego. The biggest obstruction for a person in this who is undergoing some arrogance problem is the ego that a person has. So that ego must not be challenged, because that once it wakes up, it's like a lion. It's going to gobble someone up.
Right, right. But then, Dr. Saleem, when you talk about ego, isn't that when we talk about Islam or when we study, the more you indulge in it, the more it seems it's about controlling the ego. So, like in this conversation, if when you don't challenge somebody's ego, you know, how is it that you can gently, of course, try to nudge them, but then the ego, regardless, will wake up, won't it? If somebody feels that
I mean, you see,
they
the extent of that waking up is very important. You see,
right,
when you say it indirectly, although this person would realize, but he would still have the chance to say that, well, I'm not being addressed. I mean, it's someone else, but he could learn a lesson from that, and that is what the way of the Quran is. So the Quran, on many occasions, it invites us to reflect, and it would just say that there are signs in this. There for men of insight, for people of insight, if they just reflect. So you see, indirect reasoning, it always produces the quest in a person. Direct reasoning, especially, it can create that ego problem. It can create a reaction, and there's so many other things. So it's best that you pick and choose your moment, pick and choose the person, and at times just choose to stay quiet.
right. Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. I do not see any raised hands right now. Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, this is the time. Otherwise, we're closing the session. It was a wonderful discussion today. Everybody who contributed, and thank you, Dr. Saleem, for your wisdom and for your guidance. We will, inshallah, see everybody tomorrow.